Okay, so
All right, we are live. So, anyways,
there we go. We're live.
here we go. Welcome. Let me do a quick introduction, Rebecca, and then we'll jump on to some questions and talk about some swim. So, guest audience members, this is Greg McDonough. I'm the podcast host of the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. You probably remember Beck from an episode that we recorded about a year ago. And as we kicked off our YouTube live series and following you on Instagram, I realized that you'd be an awesome person to talk about swimming and in particular open water swimming. So for those of you who don't know who Beck is, she's a 30 years of experience as a professional athlete and coach, six-time iron distance champion, deep background in exercise science, nutrition, and a triathlon coach at Team Sierra's Tri Club. Welcome. It's great to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is a fun topic because everyone's philosophy is a little bit different, but Siri and I have an approach that's worked really well for us over the last 30 years. So she wasn't a swimmer when she started triathlon at 24, couldn't swim, like literally couldn't swim. I was a swimmer, but I was not a front pack swimmer, and I ended up with this specific technique we're going to talk about, leading out the world championships in the swim, which is highly unlikely for someone who was not a swimmer.
Yeah, that's not an easy swim. I've dabbled on that swim course when I was on vacation, and I realized that if once I get the opportunity to participate in Kona, it's going to be a much more serious swim training year than I've had in the past.
Yep.
So back, like a new athlete comes. So the purpose of this YouTube live series is really to sort of talk to the audience of a newer sort of iron distance athlete, right? Somebody who's probably done a 10K, maybe a half marathon, is dabbling in triathlon, perhaps done an Olympic, but a huge shift from 750 meters to 2.4 miles in the water. How do you like approach that with a new client, with somebody you're working with, like that initial mindset, that initial shift? I just love to sort of unpack that, sort of what these athletes should expect.
Yeah, that's a great question. They're kind of my favorite athletes to coach. A lot of my athletes that come to me are beginner, and being virtual, it can be a little tougher. But I sort of tell them to forget everything they've seen on YouTube, forget everything they've seen posted all over social from influencers, and listen to Siri and I if they can, if they end up being coached by us. And just focus on what we tell them, because there's so much out there that it's becomes very, very confusing. There's like the full immersion swimming, there's the pool swimming technique. And then to come with that, not only technique, it's the absolute anxiety of swimming in open water. And I think that's one of the biggest things to conquer. And you kind of have to train your body to be able to accept that, feel it, and then say, okay, I recognize this. Like I know this is how it's going to feel on race day. And there's a lot to overcome. And then you got bodies all over you. And I think the swim anxiety is a really tough one.
Mm.
I only ever experienced it once in Roth when I was dunked under the water. And even as a swimmer, then I became a swimmer. It's terrifying. Some of the best swimmers in the sport would have panic attacks even. So you're not alone. Like, just know you're not alone. We've been there. I can guarantee you every top pro has probably overcame some sort of swim anxiety, and it's real. And they're making, the good thing is they're making races a lot safer and more comfortable than they used to with mass starts, but it's still terrifying for someone who has that fear. So I try to come to it with the approach that we need to train your body to know what it's going to feel like as much as we can in the pool, and then get them into the open water and really practice in the open water. And that can be the biggest challenge.
You know, the anxiety piece is so true. Like one of my favorite swims, I did the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon 1,000 years ago, and that's a swim you just can't train for. I mean, you can obviously, but like standing on the edge of that boat, and you're either 2 feet off the water or 12 feet off the water, depending on what the wave is. And then when you
Oh,
jump in and you get that initial cold shock,
shock. Yeah.
it's real. And in fact, I think that this anxiety around the swim is probably the leading restriction for athletes dabbling in our sport.
Yeah. And it was definitely mine too. And I was quite good in the pool. It never translated. And I think the biggest breakthrough for me, and we just talked about this, was we went to Kona 2 weeks before, And I swam that course like every single day from the turnaround. There's a point you can run out on the beach at the turnaround and swam in. Every single day I did it. And it's just, it's more about getting the confidence in the waves, in the chop, in the open water. And Hawaii's not that choppy. Like you can get like Cairns that has 4 foot waves. I remember that time. But just getting your body used to that, used to sighting, knowing that how you're going to feel in the open water, and you've always got to have someone with you, an accountability partner or a group, and go with someone more experienced because you need someone that's giving advice that has been there and done that and has confidence in the open water. You can't just, it's really hard to get that on your own. In Alcatraz, well, I've never done it, but I've heard some horror stories. Not trying to scare anyone, but you got to know where to start too. And apparently, I was told by one of the ladies that's done it for many, many years. She said they tell everybody go up to the top deck and the pros start down the bottom. And she said, don't do that. Start down the bottom deck. Just stay down there. Go right behind the pros. Just hang out behind the pros, and then jump off after them. I was like, okay, I'll tell my athlete that.
Yeah,
So
it's I've done the race twice, and the first time I get into the water, and it's for the audience members who don't know, it's a point to point. So they put you on a boat, they take you out to Alcatraz, and then you swim back to shore, and you kind of know where you're going, but there's no buoys, right? You're dealing with current, you're dealing with cold. And the first year I nailed the beach, like 100%, came in right on target. And then a few years later, I would convince myself that the pack that I was in had no idea what they were doing. And so I swam away from sort of their trajectory,
oh
and I
no.
was lost. I like got to a point that there was not even safety around me, and I had to,
Oh,
anyway, it was a terrifying experience.
yeah.
Regardless, the story's not about me, but Beck, you mentioned technique,
Mhm.
and I'd love for us to get into that conversation between sort of like the techniques that we're used to swimming in a pool with a black line on the bottom compared to an open water long distance swim. Can you talk to us a little bit about sort of the technique that you mentioned earlier on in our conversation?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of, and I'll give you a little quick story background because it's quite funny. So the Australian surf lifesaving swimmers are really damn good. Like they swim in the surf all the time, and they will. I can guarantee you they would pretty much beat any pro triathlete in the water. Actually, I can guarantee you they would. The top ones would kick any pro triathletes, but especially if it's choppy. And so Michael Phelps, Siri met him, and she was talking about open water swimming, and he said I went out with a bunch of surf lifesavers and they kicked my ass. And this is when he was in his peak, and he said it's so different to pool swimming and that his stroke just doesn't work. I'm not trying to
Mm.
scare people, but he does have a long glide. He stretches out. He still has a decent stroke rate, but that long, slow, almost like a catch-up type style, or the higher recovery. It just for open water, if you think about the waves and the chop, firstly, that I don't love it for more mature athletes with the high elbow because your arm, the rotator cuff, is designed to do like a circular movement. Like we're designed to do this, like a windmill. So you see a lot of Brent Hayden's one of them, Olympic bronze medalist freestyler. He from Canada. He talks about open arm recovery. Michael Clemmy, if you remember the Australian swimmer, he was one of the first to do it and he ended up winning Olympic gold. And that open arm for me just makes sense, and it works really well for newbies. If you've been a pool swimmer, then you can definitely get away with it a little more of having that high elbow because you're used to it. But from our perspective for new swimmers, we always say, think about it. We used to say windmill arms, but then people would come in and just smack the water really hard and wasn't quite right. So we say more, and I stole this from Brent Hayden. I want to give him credit for it because sometimes I forget to. But Brent said his mindset is open arm recovery. So it's an open arm. They open up, they come over, and then the good thing about open arm is your hand is going to enter first. If you're doing high elbow, your fingers can enter way too early. They can cross your center line. They can go
Mm.
in and then stretch out. It causes shoulder impingement. Often you pull your hand out early and you miss the last part of your stroke because you're trying to get thinking about recovery. It all happens under the water. Too many people are focused on, this rather than what happens from here, right? So open arm, if you do an open arm, your hand's going to hit the water if it comes over properly, right where it needs to be. It's already there. And then I always say, it's not even just popping the elbow up, it's thinking about pulling the water with this part of your arm, right? The whole S bend thing, that's way too hard for a triathlete to understand, and they don't really teach that in swimming anymore. But you want to think of this as a panel. And so this is where all the water is being pulled, and you just pull straight down, and then you've got to remember that you have to exit. I always get my guys to flick the furthest part down on their leg with their thumb so that they're coming out. And if it comes
Mm,
out, right, as far back as possible, you're already back here. All you need to do is rotate your shoulder. If and this is another thing where flexibility comes in, and then your hand's going to enter here. It's got way less chance of crossing over if it's already there. This is gonna, it's hard, like where do I enter? And then it crosses the center line. And so they're kind of our main, and fast stroke rate is another really big one of ours. A faster stroke rate for open water, getting through chop, getting around people. And most new swimmers, if they have a slow stroke rate, they don't have the buoyancy, they don't have the streamline, they don't have the breathing, and their strength under the water isn't good. So a slow stroke rate, they're just going to be going slow and they're going to be sinking. So if you have a good deep catch, a fast stroke rate is always going to work so much better for so many reasons. And I know I'm probably preaching to you and to most people, but just if you look at the top male and female pros, they don't have a long, slow, full. I cringe when I see the full immersion swimming where they're just stretching out and the water's all flat, right? It's warm,
mm.
dead flat. And you see them going, and it's like, that is not going to work. Like you have to train your body to think about faster stroke rate. When you're first starting, maybe, but you're also going to sink because if you don't have that strength under the water, your body, like your legs, and same thing with, there's all things with head position too. If you're looking up, your legs are going to sink. But sorry, I'm going on and on and on. There's so many things to think about, but they're kind of our main things: faster stroke rate, open arm recovery, eyes more down to bring your feet up, and bilateral breathing is another big one. Even if you don't happen to do it in the race, you have to know how to do it, because if you're always breathing to the right and the buoys are to the left, you are not going to swim straight. Like if you're used to breathing to the right and they're over there, and you're not used to breathing to the left, even if you have to, like, the good thing is if you're bilateral, you can pop your head to the left to breathe every now and then to check that your sight line, or you can look up to breathe, but sorry, look up to sight, not to breathe. But if you haven't learned that, you're going to go way off course. So we're really
Well,
big fans.
yeah, it's not in addition to that, like through my experience, on the bilateral breathing, depending on where the wind's blowing, depending on where the sun's coming up, depending on where the waves are, you can't always breathe to the right, or you can't always breathe to the left. Beck, you mentioned sighting, and I find I've gone back and forth on my sighting technique between actually catching a breath during my sighting versus just popping up the eyes. Um, do you have a
Yeah.
favorite sighting technique? And then
Yep.
I'll stop there and I'll ask them a follow on top of that.
Yep, definitely not breathing when you're sighting. Not breathing,
Mm.
because you're going to stop the rhythm unless you have to do 3 or 4 strokes because you don't know where you are, which is probably your fault. But not always, because there can be big waves. But unless you don't know where you are and it's a couple of strokes where you've got to put your head up in like big surf, which is kind of more unlikely, but it can happen. You've seen it happen. Um, you have to incorporate the sight into the breath. And if you look at any good swimmer, they do that too. And I always sort of say, it's hard with the background blurry, but you come up, you look like alligator eyes, and you still turn to the side. Like it's almost, I've got a really good
Mm.
on Instagram about it. It's like Siri calls it crocodile eyes, and you just look up, pop, and then breathe to the side. I think trying to breathe to the front, it breaks your rhythm. It's really hard to do. It breaks your rhythm as well. So we always say to try to incorporate it, if you can, to your breathing.
And then one of the techniques that I like to do, and hopefully this is kosher, but is I actually sight to the side. Is like I'm trying to get perspective of where the shoreline is, for example, on whatever side that the shore might be on, or if there's a bridge sort of 45 degrees, I could see out of my sight line that I can catch while I'm breathing, but I'm not actually putting my eyes forward.
Mm.
Any thumbs up, thumbs down to those, like finding little landmarks to focus on while breathing on the side that kind of give you a relative positioning?
That's a great question, because I don't even know if I am conscious of doing that. I probably do, because I do it in the pool all the time. I was like, where's Siri? So I can give her the finger. No, just kidding. Where's the coach? She's going to give me another 100. But you do, I think subconsciously I'm looking, and it just happens. But I don't like actively, I never actively was sighting to the side. But I was conscious of other swimmers, like, because the good thing about being pro was that the coloured caps. So if the Jodie Swallows, who's a phenomenal swimmer, and Leander Cave was an amazing open water swimmer, if I knew she was a red and a yellow cap, I'd be like, where is she? Where is she? And I'd be
Yeah.
looking for more of the swimmer. But for the age groupers, yeah, you definitely want to be seeing where you are, like relative to the pack, because if there's two packs splitting off, it's like which one's going the right way, and that's when you have to sort of look to the front to see like. And Kona for Kona for sure, like there's that big tower that you just look for, and the hotel, and you can just there's one big tower you can look for, and if you head towards that, you can't go wrong. And it's flaking on the name, but yeah, there's definitely looking at the landmarks. You have to like always try if you can to go out to a few hundred meters out to know where your exit is, because you've got to know where your exit is for the race. Like if you only can do a couple of minutes the day before, like swim out like as far as you can from where you're coming in to the exit and look for like where is the landmark, like where is it, if it's a tree, and it has to be something a little further offshore, better so than say like the flag like right on the sand. Like for the exit you want to find something in the distance like a tree or a post or something like that. Yeah,
That's really insightful. I find that both ways, right? Like coming out of the start, if there's a landmark
right.
across the bay or somewhere, or even where the sun is, like
Mhm.
those kind of give you good, because I find that there's so much panic when you pick up your head and you can't see a buoy and you've got all these people around you.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
and then the worst thing is sometimes you have like this has happened, and it was in big races where, and sometimes I've had to go up to the race directors, hey, you should change the color of these guys, because the guys on the paddle boards are wearing a red t-shirt and the buoys are red, and you're thinking, oh, that's the red buoy, and then the paddle board starts moving and you're like, oh shoot, that's not the buoy, that's a freaking marshal or a volunteer. And so that's so confusing. And I remember in Roth one year I said, can you give them yellow shirts because the buoys are red and it's really confusing because we're following that, we can't see much, and a lot of people are like short-sighted and you can't see anything, and the buoy starts moving. So it's hard. And then you've got to, let alone your swim anxiety, right? And all these people around you. It's very daunting.
We just got a comment from one of our audience members, and he's asking about, do you ever think about the creatures that are in the water with
Yeah.
you?
Don't go there, guys. It's awful. And especially when I feel the bottom, because I hate, like, I'm fine open water, but if I feel something on the bottom, I think like it's a dead body immediately. I'm like, what is that? And like just shadows, like you really can't let your mind go there. Like I've swam in part of the like induction of surf lifesaving in Australia, and I don't know if it still happens, but they drop you just outside the shark nets and you've got to swim home. And I was terrified because I kept seeing shadows and I was like, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there, because your mind starts to create, and there's crocodiles in cans. Like I was worried about those too. But when you're at the front, you have to worry so much. But yeah, you definitely don't want to go there. That's funny. You got to try not to think about that at all.
Yeah, just be faster than the person next to you,
Yeah,
I
right.
guess. I tell you, it certainly makes me appreciate like swimming at Lake Placid, right? It's flat, maybe a little wind with a rope on with a cable underneath. Anyway, so the same audience member is now asking about the feeling of a wetsuit, right?
Mm.
The first time we put those on, you jump in the water, it feels super restrictive.
Feels awful.
Clearly, as we train, we should be training in those. But any sort of insights for a newer athlete who's hasn't put on, we're in April at the moment, we're sort of getting a little longer distances in our training, depending on when your race is.
Yep.
Um, some of us will be putting our wetsuits on for the first time and getting in the water. Any tips or tricks for that
So
athlete?
many. Oh my God. I have conversations for an hour with my athletes just on their wetsuits, because I go, I don't want to wear it, it's restricting. Or I'm going to do non-sleeves. I'm like, no, 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 I'm going to wear sleeveless. I'm like, or I'm going to wear my speed suit. I said, no, you just haven't found the right wetsuit and you haven't put it on properly and you haven't practiced in it. And you're not alone. You feel like you're having a heart attack. You feel like, even as a good swimmer, there's pressure on your chest. You feel anxious. You feel like you can't breathe. It feels awful the first couple of times. You have to bear with it. And I think after, say, 3 or 4 swims in it, and I would definitely swim with it in the pool. Just make sure you wash it with soap and warm water afterwards, because it can wreck the neoprene after a while. It never wrecked any of mine. I didn't do a very good job of hosing it down, but clean it afterwards. But wear it in the pool. People think you're an idiot, but you need to wear it in a pool because it's warmer and it stretches it out. And some people tend to buy ones that are too big or way too small. And I think finding just even the right type of, like, there's Blue 70, there's Zone 3, there's so many wetsuits now. You've got to find the right one for your body type. And that might even mean buying, honestly, 3 or 4. And if it's worth it for your anxiety, then I think it's worth spending the money if you can get
Mhm.
it sent back and refunded. But the right size fit is big. Training in it in the pool, in the warm water helps, because it almost molds it to your body like a pair of shoes that you've worn a few times. And don't expect it to feel good the first time, because it just won't. But the good thing about the warm water is, because jumping into the bay at Escape from Alcatraz, like, all the wetsuit neoprene is going to shrink. Like, it's not going to feel probably good on anyone. But if you've pre-worn it enough times, and you have to do it for at least, I'd say, 10 swims, and at least 3 or 4 in the pool, if not more, um, I would do that. And then other tips for that, I've got so many. I'm trying to think which ones I should include, but putting it on to start with, plastic bag for sure. Plastic bag on your arm, like a big plastic bag from the supermarket. I use paper bags, but maybe just get one plastic and put it on through your arm, put it over your leg. Before you do that, I always put like baby oil. People are against baby oil because they say it can wreck the wetsuit, but baby oil worked really well for me. I'd put baby oil on my shoulders, because when you dive in, or you're swimming, it starts to just come down a little bit. And so the baby oil would actually, Liz Blatchford taught me this, the baby oil, so just lets it glide a little bit over your shoulder. So
Mhm.
it's not like it's not stuck on like that. It kind of has that tiny little bit of movement, because this is what can hurt your shoulders, and your shoulders will blow up because it will pull down when you start swimming. So when you put it on, the baby oil on the shoulders, baby oil on the calves, and then you always want to have a gather, right? It looks silly, but you want to have wrinkles here, and you want to have wrinkles under here. It shouldn't be jam tight. Like I always say, gather under there, gather under there, gather in your shoulders. And then I have this joke running commentary with my sister. And I say, give me a wedgie. She used to put my wetsuit on and then lift me up. And you have to give yourself the biggest wedgie. It's going to feel awful for your guys, especially because your packages are going to feel squashed. But you wedgie yourself, and then you do the same thing where you pull up, right? And it should have a gather in your crutch, because the same thing, it's going to come down. So under here should have a gather, a little bit of a gather here, like just like a little, like a tiny little gather, and then definitely a few gathers at the top of your legs. And if that means you've got to do a warm up, get out and do it again, like have that positioning of the wetsuit before you, and a really big wedgie before you start swimming. And then also your calves. Sorry, one more little thing. Your calf muscles, you want your feet under the water. And I see all these age groupers with the wetsuits all the way down to their ankle, way down, like right down, because they want their timing chip right under the wetsuit. That's all they're worried about. But their feet are almost floating, right? So that's the worst. So I always used to cut my suit right so it was just below my calf muscle. And then I just have my I bought like a neoprene number, what's it, timing chip band you can buy, so that, because the timing chips that they usually give you in a race are like, they chafe your ankles, they're awful. And they cut them, so you can actually buy your own neoprene sort of lined timing chip band that you actually put on under, so it's like a wetsuit material under the timing chip, so that it doesn't like chafe your ankle. That's another little tip.
That's fantastic. I haven't thought about like where the bottom of my wetsuit. I think I tend to have it a little bit closer to the calf, but could you spend another minute like explaining that the reasoning between like if you have it right down to your ankle versus up to your calf muscle, what's that doing to your foot position, to your kick? Like what's the this sort of the rationale behind that?
Well, you want your feet under the water. So when the neoprene
Mm,
causes your feet to float, so when it's right down on your ankle down here, like your feet are kind of almost popping right up. So you're almost swimming with your feet up, sorry, your feet up higher than
got
than
it.
their body. You want your feet under the water. So when you're kicking, you're not getting a lot out of the kick because they're almost floating to the top of the water. And most if you look at most top pros with their suits, like they don't go way down to the ankle. They go like sort of below their calf. It's
That makes
also easy
sense.
to get off, and it's easy to get off. So if you put oil like on your feet, I always put oil on my feet or Vaseline, especially for San Fran. It just put the wetsuit will come off way quicker because you see people getting their feet stuck, and that's because the wetsuit goes down so low and it's toe tight at the bottom. So it works really well for, and in the pool, you don't want your feet above the water. Obviously, you want them
Yeah,
under.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's super helpful.
Yeah.
I tend to fill my wetsuit with water. Like as I'm
Yep.
walking into the water, I'll give a big gush,
Yep.
and then
Right.
yeah.
Yep.
And then I got
I
to tell
love
you,
that.
that first pee when you're in your wetsuit, for those of you who haven't done it yet, you'll thank us later.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It helps. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, you see them just getting a little bit in there. And then I used to put a little bit in the sleeve, a little bit in the sleeve. Like if you can't get into swim, that sucks. But a lot of the time you can't. So I put water in there and water in the arms, and that will help like just to get like that little bit of friction, like movement. And if you have the baby all on the shoulders, it's honestly night and day. Like I remember I'd always blow up in my shoulders and I'd be just like, why? Why? Because you're kind of pretty tapered going in, but my shoulders would still blow up in a wetsuit. And I never forget that. And Liz Blatchford told me, and then I actually came out of the swim with her for the first time because she was a really good swimmer in Geelong. And just from doing one little thing like that, it can change everything. So the guys, especially that are more muscly, you're going to much more likely to get tight shoulders. I think stretching out your pecs, your lats like a lot the day before, and your shoulders, because it's so much harder. Like all the tradies that I coach, like they really struggle with wetsuits because they're so tight from like having their arms up all day, banging away. And I have them stretching out their pecs and their lats all the time, triceps, shoulders, because it's so important before a race and all the time before swimming. They're always so tight. So they have more trouble doing this open arm because they're just so tight in the chest. So for them, especially mobility for everyone, and as you get older, is just so important to have that mobility so you can have that good open water stroke.
Fantastic.
Mm.
Yeah, I could keep going on wetsuits. So I ask you some other questions. So, right, we're talking to the audience, newer swimmer, newer introduced to the sport. Can we talk a little bit about like the training structure? Let's assume we've got a race in late August. Like, how much should we be focusing on the swim? What's the build? Like, when do you introduce open water practice?
Mm.
Any insights that we could sort of unpack there for our audience?
Yeah, sure. So say they've got a race in about 16 weeks, let's say roundabout. I just had an athlete, Scott, one of my guys, local that I coach, 61 years old, his first ever Xterra race, and wins it and qualifies for Worlds. And that's kind of unheard of because in triathlon, it's so hard. And Xterra may not be quite as hard or in that age group, but it's hard to qualify. And he beat
Mm.
the guy that's won 4 in a row. And the guy's sort of like, where'd you come from, dude? Like, and who's your coach? I'm like, don't tell him. So,
Or
but
tell
point being, like,
them.
yeah, point being, like, his biggest thing was I said, you've got to get in open water because he didn't like open water. He wasn't used to it. He hasn't swum in a long time. We did a lot of pool swims, but 4 weeks out minimum, I was like, you are going to go down like once to twice a week and swim in the open water because it's just that, just even not necessarily to make you swim faster. That's not why you do it. It's not really going to improve your swim too much. It's the specific stuff you do in the pool is, but your confidence, like he had to get confidence in the open water. So he was doing that. We're going to do it a lot more. I would say if it's a fear of yours, I would be doing it as often as you can, like once a week. You can't let it take away from the quality of the workout. So I wouldn't say my open water swim is going to be my quality swim for the week. This is where I'm going to get my efforts in and my speed and how I'm going to improve. No, but it's definitely going to improve you because you need it for a confidence thing. So I would be starting now if it's not your jam, you're not a swimmer, the more the better, but also make sure you're still getting in 2 or 3 really good pool swims, depending on your time. You still need to get 2 really good, decent pool swims in. That's going to improve your actual fitness as well as your confidence during the week. So swim structure, 16 weeks. Yeah, open water when you can. At the latest, I would say getting in 8, like at least 8 to 10 open water swims. Practicing in your wetsuit, I would start that probably 2 months out. So in probably 8 weeks' time. And then like we sort of start off with usually like Sarah and I with our coaching, we have them send us a video, but a lot of the time it's doing some 25s and we'll do a lot of speed work with the 25s because some of my swimmers like come to me and they can't even swim more than a couple of laps. So we start with 25s and we build like a good technique over 25, and it's usually a faster stroke rate. We do a lot of band work where we tie a band around their legs, and usually it's pull boy band to start with because it really accentuates their bad body position if they're not in a good body position because they just start sinking. And I was like, yep, your stroke's too long, you're not catching enough, you're not pulling enough water, it's too short. So it's usually pull boy band first, and then we take the pull boy out. And eventually, when they can swim a couple of 100 meters with just a band, their stroke is so good because they've got their head down, they've got a fast stroke rate, they've got deep, strong catch, they've got good turnover, good breathing. And we do lots of 25s for more non-swimmers, and then we build up to hundreds and the longer stuff. And when they're doing the longer stuff, because they fatigue quickly, like I'm not opposed like the Brett Sutton style where you use pull boy band for the longer stuff just to get your breathing right. And I think snorkel is a huge and amazing tool because you can look at it helps you with just looking at your stroke, seeing where you're entering the water, and being able to really focus on your hand entry and your pull. And then building the fitness over the longer stuff, like over the next sort of 16 weeks. And that's just, we do all sessions. We do strength, paddles, pull boy band, band only, band paddles. And then we'll do endurance where they're doing longer stuff with snorkel, pull boy band. And I'm saying pull boy band a lot, and we don't want to be focused on that. But as a new swimmer, it can be really hard if I go and swim 800 meters nonstop. Some of them just can't do that. But I find with the pull boy band, they can, or with the pull boy, it helps a lot. So, I'd stay away from fins because it causes so many injuries. I think ankle flexibility, it's just, I'm not a huge fan of fins. I know some people are, but I think we don't want to rely on the kick for our body position. We want to rely on the catch and the pull more, but the legs should just be more of a, I don't know, 4 beat, no more than 4 to 6 beat, well, more 4 beat, 2 to 4 beat in open water because it's more of a balancing the pull propulsion. You want it to come from the faster stroke rate. So, yeah, lots to unpack there. Sorry, that was a
Yeah,
long.
yeah. Yeah, I find that on my kick, it's really more for the balance, right? I don't want to be burning out my legs in my open water swim before jumping on my bike and getting into the run.
Yeah.
Um, I do have a, I do, and tell me if you agree with this, like the last 200 meters, 100 meters into T1, I'll kick pretty vigorously to try to get the
Brilliant.
blood down to my legs
Brilliant. You
again.
got to. That's so important. Siri actually said that to me because I said to her, I get out of the water and I feel like I'm going to collapse. And she said, well, you kick the last 100 meters? I'm like, I've never thought about that. And I remember my first Ironman, I go to get out of the water and I just like poof, straight over. I was like, what is that? And I'm cramping. And I was like, oh, this is a great start. I ended up winning it, thank God. But it was a terrible start to getting out of the swim. I thought if I'm cramping now, I'm in trouble. But thank God
Mm.
that didn't happen. But yeah, great advice to just kick the last couple of hundred because the blood flow and you're getting out and your legs aren't jelly. Your legs will probably be jelly anyway, but it does help a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I got to say, I know if I was a new, or I guess just thinking back 10 years ago when I started my sort of long distance career, I mean, granted, I'm a back of the packer, so I have a lot of fun with it. I would be overwhelmed listening to this YouTube live just from 30 minutes. So I'm going to cut this show off. I do want to give you back an opportunity to sort of tell the audience like where they can find you. I know you're all over Instagram. I love the tips and tricks you and Siri are posting on that. I cherish it every time it comes across my feed. And
Thanks.
our conversation today is going to change my pool workout for tomorrow. But anyway, just love to give you a chance to sort of throw out your social media handles. Obviously, we'll put them in our notes and our comments, but go
Yeah,
for it.
sure. And if anyone wants 21 free workouts, I've been giving that away lately. It's our top 7 swim, bike, run workouts for each discipline. So I've got those two. Just let me know and reach out to me. I'll send that out. But it's Team Serious Tri Club, but you can't find me on there. You got Instagram is just Beck_Keat, which is BEK_KEAT, because most people don't know Rebecca spelled REBEKAH. So no one can kind of find me on social. So I'm now Beck Keat. And then Siri, of course, is Siri Lindley. and yeah, like any help. My goal is just to add value. I definitely don't do this to make money. All of our support from our businesses go to saving horses. So that's our nonprofit, Believe Ranch and Rescue. So it's definitely a passion of mine. And yeah, just reach out. Love to help you. And yeah, keep following Greg. And it's so good to be on. Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome. That's awesome. All right, I'm going to hit end stream. I hope you audience members enjoyed the show. We'll be doing this again next week. So stay tuned for that announcement. Yeah, it's been great to be with you, Beck.
Thank you for having me.
End stream. Awesome.
I didn't know we were live, like as in live live. Like I know you I thought we were recording it.